So greenhouse. Right. You guys know the whole story about Olive, my gorgeous rhino greenhouse. For those of you who don't, I originally started in this garden as a complete novice. No gardening experience whatsoever. This is my very first garden. So when I bought my first greenhouse, I was a bit wary about, would I really stick to this? Would I go and spend a fortune on a greenhouse, because they're not cheap, and then decide it's not for me, and it would have been a waste of money. So I started off with a polycarbonate greenhouse. Not one of those kind of like lightweight frames with some polythene over it, but it was an actual metal structure, proper greenhouse this size, but instead of glass it was polycarbonate. And I have to say, if you're just starting out, or if you don't have the budget for a glass greenhouse, they are fantastic, and it did the job. I had it 6 years, and I grew tomatoes and peppers and all sorts in it, and it was brilliant. But it had one flaw, and that being that polycarbonate is super light, and being a cheap greenhouse, it wasn't the most sealed, shall we say. So it let the wind in, it let the rain in, it got pretty horrible and disgusting. But the main thing with the wind was, because it was lightweight and because there were gaps and the wind could get in, every time it was properly windy, I spent the next morning going around the neighbourhood trying to retrieve bits of my greenhouse. And I'm not just saying that for effect, that genuinely is what happened. And there's a car park not far over there, and I used to be terrified that something, the roof usually would fly out and go that way, and I used to be terrified it was going to hit a car. But yeah, so polycarbonate versus glass. Just for the wind factors alone, I would say glass is way better, it copes better. Obviously, if glass gets smashed, it's really expensive to replace. Polycarbonate is really cheap to replace those panels when the wind blows them out and you lose them. So let's look at positives and minuses. Right, polycarbonate, much, much cheaper. My polycarbonate greenhouse, which was the same size as this one, was I think about £350. This one, the glass greenhouse, this one was £1,100. Big difference. The panels, the polycarbonate panels themselves, if one of these got broken, polycarbonate would cost me £10 to buy a new panel, and I could cut it with a knife and fit it myself. Obviously, the glass gets broken, it's going to be a lot more expensive. Touch wood, I haven't had that problem yet, and this is very good. This is toughened safety glass, so hopefully I won't ever have that issue. And luckily I don't have any trees around here that are likely to fall on it during these winds, so that's a good thing. Now, polycarbonate greenhouse companies that sell them, the websites I've looked at, they talk about this, and they tell you that polycarbonate heats up faster than glass does, so it lets the heat in and holds onto that heat much, much better. Glass lets the heat dissipate much quicker. So whether that's a plus or a minus depends, I suppose, on where you live. It's probably a plus here because at night it gets quite cold here, and I might want I might want it to stay warm for longer and dissipate slower. However, the thing to watch out for is if it's single wall polycarbonate, that's not true. The single wall stuff actually lets the heat out much faster than glass does, because it's just one thin sheet of plastic, if you like, polycarbonate. But if you get the dual wall stuff, so my old one, the roof was dual wall and the walls were single. So the dual paned or dual walled stuff actually has a gap between, it's like double glazing. So that holds onto the heat much better. So it's something to watch out for. They're not all the same. Durability wise, the polycarbonate might be cheaper, but this came with a 25-year guarantee. So if there's any parts that wear out faster than expected or aren't right or whatever, there's a 25-year guarantee, and it is also incredibly sturdy. You have no idea. I don't think on a video I can show you just how sturdy this is. It's awesome. So yeah, so there's a thing. Now, points about glass that are better. Glass, obviously, it's crystal clear, it's beautifully clear and easy to clean, so it lets the light in much, much better. The polycarbonate, when it was new, was like that, but after probably just a few months, and definitely after a year, it had gone a kind of slightly foggy, let's call it foggy, where it was no longer that clear, and even when you were giving it a good clean, it was never back to being the same again, and it got worse as the years went on. So that's something to think about. In terms of cleaning, I've just done my first winter clean of this greenhouse, and I can tell you it is night and day compared to how it was like to clean the polycarbonate greenhouse. That thing was disgusting. The dual wall used to get all sorts of inside it, and it would just grow green stuff inside, and I couldn't get to it to clean it. It was just horrible. And because it was so lightweight and flimsy, it was hard to even just like clean it with a sponge, because it would go boom boom when you pressed on it. So this, I'd say, is much easier to maintain. In terms of growing, last year, what have I done in this so far? So previous spring, I grew tomatoes and peppers and chilies and herbs. I'm going round in my head around the greenhouse to see what was where, and they all grew brilliantly. The seedlings grew faster, took quicker. I don't know if that's to do with it was better light, it was warmer or whatever, but I did find that things came on a lot quicker in here than they did with the polycarbonate. And I do find it's much easier to use because it's sturdier, and I'm not always worrying and having to be careful and stuff. So yeah, so I think it comes down to your budget and what you want to get out of it, I think. I'm not going to say that you shouldn't. I'm going to say I prefer the glass greenhouse. Okay, I think this one is awesome. I can't talk about different brands because this is the only one I've ever used, but I will say that I wouldn't go back to polycarbonate. I much prefer this one. However, if polycarbonate is where your budget sits, I think it is a really good thing for your money, and I would say go with polycarbonate rather than nothing, definitely. Yeah, so I'm really happy. I just really want to get started on getting planted up, that's all. I just want to get the greenhouse going again now. Okay, it was lovely talking to you guys. So like I say, if you want to be part of the gang, I've never done this before. This is what all the proper YouTubers do, so let's try it and see. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell if you want to get notified when I do my next video, and I will see you next time. And now I have to do this thing where I go whoosh.